Uncle Owen! Aunt Beru! Uncle Owen! Ah.
Oh no! Anyway.
Hello my friends and welcome back to Player Display. Oh, sorry, I didn't crack my knuckles until after I started the camera. I'll do a better job next time. So today we have another customizers showcase. This time we have the Tarman from Return of the Living Dead, a comedy classic which I have a very... no, I'm not being sarcastic today. I literally just watched that movie under 24 hours ago, and that somehow resulted in the most impulsive custom that I've ever produced. Literally, I watched the movie last night, then I watched the movie again this morning, all the while I was putting this figure together. By the time the movie was finished, boom, got a Tarman. God damn it, Tarman was one of my favorite parts of that entire movie, and a movie full of really awesome things. It was full of a lot of comedy, it was full of a lot of tragedy, the practical effects were absolutely hysterical, and it was probably one of the scariest zombie apocalypses I've ever seen depicted in a film. But naturally, as I've said, Tarman was the big standout, and I whipped him up in literally less than 6 hours, I'm pretty sure. Let's go ahead and look over the figure, and I'll give you an idea of how I did him. Again, I don't really have all the base components with me to show you, so we're going to be relying on a few screenshots on the camera over here, so you'll see those floating on by as I go through the recipe for this Tarman over here. So Return of the Living Dead is still a very new experience for me. I knew of the movie, I knew of Tarman, but I never actually watched the film until I saw it turn up on Shudder just a few days ago. So I watched it and of course fell head over heels for it, and then more so for Tarman, one of its most standout zombies, even though the word zombie itself was not used in the film, like a lot of zombie movies, interestingly enough. As for Tarman, I knew that I really wanted an action figure of him. There weren't a whole lot out there. Really, the best one I could find was a 1/6 scale Trick or Treat Studios figure of him, which looks really good, but even then, after eyeballing that figure, and then also shots from the movie, then some other merch that's been floating around, Tarman is a very hard design to nail in any form. Even in the movie, every frame you see him in, he's a little bit varied. Like they slapped new makeup on the guy every time they were bringing Tarman out for another shot. So basically, after just tying all the references I could together, this was the end result, and I'm pretty pleased. Obviously, not the most screen-accurate thing there is, but then again, neither is the on-screen counterpart, just because he changes so much. He's basically a zombie coated in a symbiote slime, and he's radically changing every time he appears on the television, so it's really hard to say what is the definitive look for him. I'd say it's more the shot where he infamously says, "More brains." And that's another really exciting thing about this zombie, which I didn't realize until I watched the movie, that kind of blew my mind. This is the first zombie that ever demanded brains ever, so I think that's really friggin' cool. So anyways, as for the construction of this guy, as you could probably suspect, this was built from the NECA Creepshow Creeper, the first release, and I got that figure some time ago, then I watched Creepshow afterwards, and honestly, I didn't really stick with it as much as I was hoping, but I kind of had the figure, I just wanted a cool zombie, and then I finally watched Return of the Living Dead, and like, holy shit, I know what to do with this figure now. And boom, like less than 24 hours later, Tarman. Pretty much as you'll see in the shots on the screen, I began with cutting out a few parts of the head sculpt. That was really the main thing, and then before that, actually removed the robes. And there was a whole beautiful base body for a zombie underneath. Like all the paintwork, all the sculpt work was there, as you could see over here. So again, I did a little bit of trimming up on the face, got rid of the eyes. And actually one crazy thing I did is I used my good tried and true glue gun to fill in some of the gaps on the head, because I don't know what they were trying to do, but the base head for the creep had hair, and then the head was like really indented for some reason. I don't know why. So I used a glue gun to fill in the gaps, and then the day after that, that's when I started the paint. So basically I got some Krylon, and I hit it with some black, and then the next thing I did is I took some spare Bandai ball joints that were kind of just left behind from some model kits, then I cut them in half so that way I could create the big eyes and then stick those in. So those are actually half spheres, they're not like full balls of plastic that are stuck in or anything like that. And then I wound up hand painting those at the end. So basically for the paint, I did the black Krylon, then I did the hand painted work, which was kind of just on the ribs, very sparingly with some brown, some red was in there, I believe. At one point, no longer. I did several coats, did a little bit on the knee down there, and then also down here on the feet, and then also a little bit on the back, and most importantly, and most intimidatingly, on the top of the head, which I thought was going to be the most difficult thing to do. If you can't do the head sculpt, then the rest of the thing I feel like would fall flat, but ultimately I think it came together very well. And then the next thing I had to do, of course, was paint in the eyes, which was extremely trivial. Then I also had to redo the teeth. And I actually did some suggested teeth because the creep did not have enough teeth to have him fully check out as the Tarman. So I actually painted in some suggested teeth over there, which are not molded, they're just painted in. So that helps to give him a little bit more of a maw or almost a grimace as we kind of saw him with. And the last thing I did, sculpt-wise, I forgot to mention, is I cut out the nose. As you can see, there is no longer a nose, especially from that side there. Just used a little bit of an X-Acto knife, no problem, really. Then I also painted in a little bit of the tongue. I probably could have, like, sculpted one in or gotten some pieces of fodder to do it, but I'm okay with it just being in there. I didn't want to lose any of the teeth work that I did on there. After that, I sprayed with the gloss coat, then I got some bits from an old wallet that I had, trimmed them up, and then that's what allowed me to do these hanging down strips. Of course, you saw this on the 1/6 scale figure of Tarman, but on the movie counterpart, there was like hundreds of them. It was crazy. There's no way I could have done that on my own, so I decided to just settle for following with the 1/6 scale figure. So I got a few coming down from the shoulders, some from the wrists, some from the elbows, and then as for the pants, I actually did a wrapping on each leg, and then I did something around the hip. So this is not a full pair of pants. It's kind of implied. I did a lot of deception work on this figure. Like, as you can see, if we turn around to the side, you'll see that there's a little bit of the exposed plastic sculpt work, but because that's black, then the leather is also black, it kind of blends in, especially when you're looking at him from the front, you barely notice. And this is a character, if you really do want to make a custom of him, you can get away with a lot because he's supposed to be very disheveled. Again, every time you see him, he's a little bit varied. So if there's any mistakes in there, they're not going to be that noticeable. And will kind of just add to the sloppy nature of this zombie that we have. That's pretty much how I put the figure together. Now, just to look over some basic details, we have 3 hands actually, because the creep came with 3 of them, of course. So we have the 2 really big open hands. I really did want to use the brown, I guess, flesh tone sparingly. It was pretty much just on the fingers, a little bit on the rib cage, the skull at the top, and then the feet at the bottom. And I kind of just did it on the knee here just as a stylistic choice, just to give him a little bit of asymmetry. And I really like how sparingly the brown is used, so you have a little bit of that saturation, that contrast when against a figure which is mostly just predominantly black. So I really like how it breaks up this sculpt a little bit. And then the third hand we have, I didn't really put a whole lot of effort into this. It's a gripping hand, which of course belonged to the creep. It's actually a very good hand, very flexible. It could hold just about anything. I can't really see myself using it a whole lot on this particular custom over here, unless perhaps I'd want him to hold a chain accessory, because he did wind up using a chain very briefly in the film, because these zombies are really friggin' smart. And that's pretty much it for what I did here. Again, really simple, did it in a matter of hours, but really simple thing that you could do if you have a creep on hand. And it was a figure I didn't really feel too bad sacrificing because, first of all, I'm not a huge creep show guy. I would like to revisit them, to reevaluate them a little bit. I think I've only seen the first one. But not only that, they did re-release the creep in a more ultimate treatment, so he has more head sculpts, more accessories, things of that nature. So I kind of just had this creep figure, and I'm like, he's cool, but I don't really connect with him a whole ton. So then I watched Return of the Living Dead, saw Tarman, I'm like, yep, yeah, he's going to be a different zombie on my shelf. Now, Return of the Living Dead is pretty much an isolated movie, at least when you consider the fact that Night of the Living Dead became public domain, thus resulting in such spin-offs as Return. There are still some other characters that would be pretty cool to display him with. So first of all, I have McFarlane's very old Negan figure, and as you can see, waist down, things get a little bit awkward. I kind of used the Nightwing legs from Gotham Knights to give him some articulation, because one day the figure kind of just fell apart in my hands. And you can see that there's still those blue little accents I kind of got to paint away, but now Negan has leg articulation, so good for him and Lucille. Then over here, we have probably the most famous zombie of all time, being Jason Voorhees. This is the NECA New Blood variant, and they look pretty kick-ass next to each other. And then over here, kind of just to flex him, even though he doesn't really have much to do with anyone else here, I have my custom Jigsaw John Kramer, the Jigsaw Killer Saw figure, or whatever the hell you want to call him. I made this guy years ago. He's pretty much a DC Essentials Black Manta base body, also with, I believe it was Mezco Saw figure bits kind of thrown in there, also with the fine old wrist blade. And of course, no figure can possibly be reviewed on this desk without, of course, encountering our best friend, Star Wars The Black Series, Muck Muck.
They really gotta do something about those oceans, do they?
And that is effectively a close on my custom Tarman over here. Lightning quick review. Notice how I saved the word quick for the end of the review, because I always know if I start a review with quick, that usually means it's going to be like 30 minutes long or something, but no, not this time, pretty quick. I'm pleased with the results. And it's unfortunate that we don't get a lot of figures of this particular character. I mean, horror's tricky, especially because it is probably the most niche genre of them all. There's a lot of cult movies, there's a lot of low-budget movies, spin-offs, remakes, and all that. So for some of these figures, it really is a spin of the roulette wheel as to whether or not there's going to be an official release that matches your standards. Again, there's a 1/6 scale figure of this guy, and I probably would have gone for him, except that he wasn't articulated in the leg, so I feel like he would have been a little bit limited for my tastes. So I wanted to go ahead and make a modern 7-inch scale rendering to go alongside all my NECA figures, and you know what? He does just fine. And finally, I have a definitive zombie that's not as prolific like Jason Voorhees to go on my horror shelf, to go toe-to-toe with some of my other characters. As for the movie, what a gas. I'm glad I finally watched it. I'm very behind on a lot of the classics, so I'm really happy I finally got around to it. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, then please, as per usual, be sure to like, comment,
and subscribe.
or like a whole bunch of monsters are gonna invade your home, Scoop! Zoinks! Blah! And also, happy 4th. I am actually recording this on the 3rd, so I'm not totally sure when I'm going to have this posted or not. But regardless, this video should be posted just in time for party time! Hopefully you guys can celebrate with me with this nice custom over here. Thanks very much, eat some good food,
Or brains.
rock on, and I will see you all later. I love zombies. I wish they'd just do more zombie figures. Come on. I mean, we really do need more zombies to go toe-to-toe with. I guess perhaps Ash comes to mind. A variety of other horror characters. Doomslayer, I guess, could even work. I mean, zombies are just such an important part of the horror genre, and it's not enough to just get the ones that are the big names like Jason over here, and then Tarman, who I kind of forced into existence. Just generic zombies, you know, like just basic brandless zombies that we could drop alongside our other 7-inch figures. I think that would be lovely.